The courtroom was packed. Reporters scribbled in their notepads, cameras clicked, and the air buzzed with tension. It wasn't just another trial. This case had captured the nation's attention. At the center of it all stood Judge Malcolm Wright, a respected man with years of experience on the bench. He wasn't just a judge. He was a symbol of justice, a man who had spent his life ensuring fairness, no matter who stood before him. But today, fairness was the last thing on Officer Greg Simmons' mind. Tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating authority, Simmons had made a name for himself, but not for the right reasons. He had been accused, more than once, of using excessive force, especially against people who looked like Judge Wright. And now, the two stood face to face in a moment neither had planned for. Simmons' jaw clenched as he argued with the judge, his voice laced with frustration. "This is a waste of time, Your Honor," he snapped, barely hiding his contempt. Judge Wright remained calm, his steady gaze locked on the officer. "The law is not a waste of time, Officer Simmons. And in this courtroom, respect is not optional." The tension thickened. Everyone could feel it. The officer's hand twitched. Maybe it was years of unchecked power. Maybe it was something deeper. But before anyone could react, he did the unthinkable. He swung. A fist cut through the air, aimed straight at the judge's face. Gasps filled the courtroom. A reporter's pen clattered to the floor. And then impact. But not the kind anyone expected. Because Judge Wright didn't just take the hit. He moved fast. Faster than a man his age should. And when Simmons' fist connected, something changed in the officer's eyes. Shock. A split-second realization that he had made a grave mistake. The room froze. The next move would change everything. Just like a simple act of kindness had changed the life of a teenager miles away. Miles away, in a crowded city bus, a young black teen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had just finished a long shift at his after-school job, his backpack heavy on his lap. His feet ached. But when he saw the pregnant woman step onto the bus, her face tired, hand resting on her belly, he didn't think twice. He stood. "Ma'am, you can take my seat," he said, voice soft but certain. She looked at him, surprised. Then, with a grateful smile, she lowered herself into the seat. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded, plugging his headphones back in, unaware that his life was about to change. Because when the woman got off the bus, she didn't just leave. She slipped a small folded note into his backpack. A note that would turn his world upside down. And when he read it, his hands trembled. What was written inside? And what would it mean for his future? Stay tuned. This is just the beginning. The bus rumbled forward, the noise of the city outside blending with the soft murmur of conversations inside. The teen, whose name was Jamal, sat quietly, staring out the window. His mind was far from the crowded streets or the flashing lights of passing cars. It was still on the woman, the way she had looked at him, as if she wanted to say something more. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. He had only done what his mother had always taught him: be kind, even when no one's watching. But now there was this note. He hadn't even realized she had slipped it into his backpack until he reached inside for his phone and felt the thin, folded paper against his fingertips. His brow furrowed as he pulled it out, smoothing it open. And then, as he read the words, his hands trembled. "You don't know me, but what you just did means more than you can imagine. If you ever need help, real help, call this number. No matter what. I owe you." Below the message was a phone number. No name. No explanation. Just the note, the number, and a promise that didn't make sense. Jamal's heart pounded. Who was she? Why would she owe him for something as small as giving up his seat? He glanced around the bus, as if expecting to see her still there, watching him. But she was gone. The mystery of the note sat heavy in his palm, and though he didn't know it yet, it would change everything. Meanwhile, across town, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Wright stood tall, his pulse steady despite what had just happened. Simmons had expected him to flinch, to stumble, to react with fear. But he hadn't. Instead, the officer was the one frozen in place, his fists still clenched, his own shock mirrored in the faces of everyone watching. A bailiff rushed forward, hands hovering as if unsure whether to intervene. Gasps still lingered in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on every single person in that courtroom. A cop had just attacked a sitting judge. In open court, in front of cameras. Judge Wright took a slow breath, steadying himself. Then, with an eerie calmness, he spoke. "Officer Simmons," he said, his voice even but laced with something deeper. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Simmons' mouth opened, then closed. He was a man used to control, to intimidation, but for the first time, he looked like someone who had completely lost his grip on the situation. His career, his reputation, everything was now hanging by a thread. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing, capturing every second of the chaos. The moment was already spreading like wildfire. Within minutes, the world would know. But Judge Wright wasn't done. "You think that badge makes you untouchable?" His voice was measured, but each word hit like a hammer. "You think this courtroom belongs to you?" He took a step closer, the weight of his years on the bench giving him a presence that couldn't be ignored. "You just proved exactly why men like you don't deserve to wear it." The tension tightened, suffocating the air itself. And then, as if the universe wasn't finished twisting fate, the doors burst open. A court official rushed in, breathless, a phone in hand. His eyes darted between the judge and the officer, hesitation flashing across his face before he finally spoke. "Judge Wright, sir, you need to see this," he said, his voice almost shaking. It's all over the news. And there's more." Judge Wright didn't move at first. He simply held Simmons' gaze for a long, unblinking moment before finally turning to take the phone. He glanced down at the screen, and what he saw made his expression shift, just slightly, but enough for those watching closely to notice. Whatever it wasn't just about the punch. It was bigger. Meanwhile, Jamal was still staring at the note in his hands, the words running through his head over and over again. He should just ignore it, right? It was probably nothing. But something deep inside told him it wasn't. He tapped the number into his phone, his thumb hovering over the call button. His mind raced. Who was she? What kind of help was she talking about? What had he unknowingly stepped into just by giving up his seat? He took a deep breath. And then, before he could overthink it, he pressed call. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. "I was wondering when you'd call." Jamal froze. The woman's voice was calm, almost expecting him. But there was something else in it, something serious. Yeah," he said, clearing his throat. I can't talk much now," she interrupted, her tone low, almost urgent. "But listen to me carefully. You did something good today. And, because of that, I need to do something good for you." Jamal swallowed, gripping the phone tighter. "I don't understand." "You will." A pause. "But first, you need to be careful. Things are happening. And you're in the middle of it now." Jamal's heart pounded harder. "What things? What are you talking about?" Another pause. Then, softly, "Check the news." The call cut off. Jamal stared at his phone, his pulse in his ears. "Check the news?" Slowly, he opened a browser, typing in the latest headlines. And when he saw what was plastered across every news site, his breath caught. It wasn't just about the courtroom incident. It was about him. Somehow, in some way, his name was in the headlines too. And he had no idea why. Jamal's fingers trembled as he scrolled through the headlines. His eyes darted across the screen, reading each word, but his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Teen's simple act of kindness goes viral, but there's more to the story. Young man's gesture caught on camera. Now a mystery woman wants to change his life. Who is the pregnant woman who left a cryptic note for a teen on a bus? Jamal's stomach twisted. This wasn't just some feel-good story about a kid giving up his seat. It was everywhere. But why? He had only done what any decent person should do. Why was the world suddenly interested in him? His phone buzzed in his hand. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Hello. You need to get somewhere safe." The voice was the same. The woman from the bus. But this time, she sounded different, more urgent. Jamal's pulse quickened. "What's going on? Why is my name in the news?" A pause. Then, because people are looking for you. Jamal's breath caught. Who? But the call cut off. His mind raced. None of this made sense. Why would people be looking for him? And why was this woman so invested in warning him? Across town in the courtroom, Judge Wright lowered the phone in his hand. His expression was unreadable, but anyone who knew him well would have noticed the way his fingers tightened around the device just slightly. Whatever he had just seen, it had changed something. Officer Simmons was still standing there, his face flushed, his breathing heavy. He looked like he wanted to say something, but for the first time in his life, he seemed to have lost the upper hand. The reporters weren't even focused on him anymore. They were on their phones, whispering to one another. Something had shifted. Judge Wright turned to the bailiff. Clear the courtroom. The order sent a ripple through the room. The bailiff hesitated but then nodded, raising his voice. All rise. This session is adjourned. People reluctantly began filing out, whispering amongst themselves. The tension didn't ease, it only deepened. As the doors closed, Judge Wright finally spoke, his voice low and firm. You just made the worst mistake of your career, Simmons. The officer scoffed, but his bravado was cracking. You think you're done. The judge's words cut through the air like a knife. And when this goes public, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything you thought made you powerful. Simmons clenched his jaw. You don't know who you're messing with, right? The judge let out a slow breath. No, he said. You don't. And then he walked out, leaving the officer standing there, his world starting to collapse around him. Meanwhile, Jamal paced back and forth in his tiny bedroom. He had locked the door, not that it would do much if someone really wanted to get in. His mom was still at work, his little sister at a friend's house. He was alone. And right now, that felt more dangerous than ever. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Turn on the news. Channel 7. Jamal grabbed the remote, his hands still shaking, and flipped to the station. The screen changed, and there, in bold letters, was a headline that made his blood run cold. Breaking news. Unidentified woman linked to high-profile case, seen in contact with local teen. The footage cut to a blurry surveillance image. It was him, on the bus, standing up, giving his seat away. And then her, the woman. She was looking right at the camera, almost as if she had known it was there. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Authorities are searching for this woman, who has been identified as a key figure in an ongoing legal investigation. It is unclear why she reached out to the teen, but sources suggest she may have information that could shift the entire case. Jamal sat down, his legs suddenly weak. What legal case? Why would she be involved? And why had she chosen him? His phone buzzed one more time. He picked it up, staring at the screen. If they find you before I do, everything changes. Get ready.
Jamal didn't know what that meant.
But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a bus seat anymore. Jamal's heartbeat pounded in his ears. The words on his phone screen felt heavier than anything he'd ever read. If they find you before I do, everything changes. Who were they? And why was this woman so determined to reach him first? The walls of his small bedroom suddenly felt too close, too tight. He stood up, pacing. He wanted to call someone, his mom, a friend, but what would he even say? Hey, I gave up my seat on a bus, and now I'm all over the news? Some mystery woman left me a note, and now people are looking for me? It sounded insane. His fingers hovered over his phone. He could text her back, ask for answers. But what if someone was already tracking him? He glanced at his window, at the quiet street below. Was someone out there, watching? A sharp knock at the front door made his breath hitch. He froze. Another knock. Louder this time. Jamal's mind raced. It was too early for his mom to be home. And his sister always texted before coming back. His legs locked in place. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was. Jamal Carter? A deep voice. Firm. Unfamiliar. His chest tightened. We need to speak with you. This was real. Jamal stepped back from the door, his thoughts scrambling. Should he answer? Run? Hide? His phone buzzed again, and without thinking, he glanced down. Do not open the door. His breath caught. She knew. Another knock, this time with more force. Jamal, we know you're in there. We just have a few questions.
Lies.
He could hear it in their tone. This wasn't just about questions. His fingers gripped his phone so tightly it felt like it might crack. His eyes darted around his room. He needed time. He needed to think. Then, as if answering his silent prayers, his phone buzzed once more. A new message. Back door.
Now.
Jamal didn't hesitate. He grabbed his backpack, threw on a hoodie, and moved as quietly as he could. The voices at the front door were still speaking, their words muffled. He slipped into the kitchen, his fingers fumbling with the lock on the back door. It clicked open. Cold air rushed against his skin. He stepped out, and immediately a hand grabbed his wrist. Jamal sucked in a sharp breath, ready to yank away, but then he saw her face. The woman. "Come with me," she whispered, her grip firm but not aggressive.
Now.
For a second he hesitated. Every warning he had ever heard about strangers ran through his mind. But something about the way she was looking at him, intense but not unkind, told him she wasn't the threat. The real danger was still at the front door. Voices grew louder inside. They were coming in. "Jamal," she urged. His feet moved before his brain fully processed it. He followed her into the alley behind his building, his pulse racing as they ducked between parked cars and into the shadows. Sirens wailed in the distance. Jamal had a sinking feeling they were for him. As they moved quickly through the darkened streets, his mind spun with questions. Who was this woman? What had he gotten himself into? And most terrifying of all, what would happen if they got caught? Miles away, Judge Wright sat in his office, his fingers steepled as he watched the news play out on his television. He had seen this before, how stories twisted, how narratives were shaped by those who pulled the strings behind the scenes. But this was different. His phone rang. He already knew who it was before he answered. "You see what's happening?" The voice on the other end was sharp, direct. "They're moving fast." Judge Wright exhaled. "I see it. If they find him first, he's done." A pause. "And so are you." The judge's grip tightened around the phone. He had spent his life fighting for justice. But this was bigger than a single courtroom, bigger than any case he had ever ruled on. This was a game. And Jamal was now the piece everyone was scrambling to control. Judge Wright wasn't about to let that happen. Not without a fight. The night air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of the city as Jamal followed the woman through the narrow alleyways. His heart was still hammering from the near encounter at his house, but his mind was racing even faster. He didn't know where she was taking him or why she had chosen him of all people, but at this point, he had no choice but to trust her. She moved with purpose, her steps quick and deliberate, as if she knew exactly where they needed to go. Jamal stole a glance at her face, trying to read her expression, but she gave nothing away. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman didn't slow down. "Someone who's trying to keep you alive." Jamal swallowed hard. That wasn't exactly the comforting answer he was hoping for. They rounded a corner, and she suddenly stopped. She pressed her back against the brick wall of a deserted building and motioned for him to do the same. Jamal did as he was told, his breath coming in short bursts. He wanted to ask what they were hiding from, but then he heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Jamal's stomach twisted. Whoever was looking for him wasn't done yet. The woman carefully peeked around the corner, then turned back to him. "We need to move."
Now.
Jamal nodded, but before they could take another step, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The vibration felt like a gunshot in the silence. He fumbled to silence it, but it was too late. The footsteps quickened. The woman cursed under her breath. "Run." Jamal didn't need to be told twice. His legs moved before his mind could catch up, his feet pounding against the pavement. The woman was right beside him, weaving through the back streets like she had done this 100 times before. Jamal could hear voices behind them now, shouting orders, demanding they stop. His lungs burned, his pulse thudding in his ears, but he pushed forward. Then, just when he thought they might have lost their pursuers, she made a sharp turn into an abandoned parking lot and stopped. Jamal nearly crashed into her. "What are you doing?" he gasped, glancing over his shoulder. "We have to keep going." She ignored him. Instead, she pulled out her phone and hit a number. "Where are you?" she demanded the second the call connected. A pause. Then, "We don't have time for this. We need an exit now." Jamal's chest tightened. Whoever was on the other end of that call was their only way out. And from the panic in her voice, that way out wasn't guaranteed. The sound of approaching footsteps sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through Jamal's veins. Then headlights. A car screeched into the lot, tires kicking up dust. The back door flung open before the vehicle even came to a full stop. "In," the woman ordered. Jamal hesitated for half a second, but the sound of their pursuers getting closer erased any doubt. He dove into the back seat. The woman slid in after him, slamming the door just as the car peeled away. For the first time, Jamal allowed himself to exhale. Then he looked up at the driver, and his blood ran cold. Sitting in the front seat, gripping the steering wheel with an unsettling calmness, was Judge Wright. Jamal's mind couldn't process what he was seeing. "Wait." The judge's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "I think it's time we had a talk." Jamal barely had time to react before the woman next to him let out a sharp breath. "This is bigger than you think," she murmured. Jamal didn't doubt that for a second. The car sped off into the night, but the danger wasn't over. If anything, it had only just begun. Jamal sat frozen in the back seat, his breath uneven as Judge Wright's eyes flickered toward him in the rearview mirror. Nothing about this made sense. A judge, a man who worked in courtrooms, deciding the fates of people like him, was the one driving him away from danger. And the woman, the one who had warned him, the one who had somehow known exactly where to find him, was sitting next to him like this was all part of some master plan. Jamal's throat was dry. "What is happening?" The woman exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "You were never supposed to be in the middle of this." Judge Wright's grip tightened on the wheel. "And yet, here we are." Jamal's stomach churned. "Middle of what?" His voice cracked. "I don't even know what's going on. I just gave up my seat on a bus. That's it. Why am I running for my life? Why is my name in the news?" Silence filled the car for a long moment. Then the woman spoke. "Because you saw something you weren't supposed to see." Jamal's pulse spiked. His mind reeled, trying to retrace his steps. He had been on the bus listening to music, not paying attention to anything. He had stood up, given his seat to the woman, and his stomach dropped. The man, the one who had gotten on right after her. He had barely noticed him at the time. Just another passenger, another face in the crowd. But now, as the memory resurfaced, his brain clung to the details. The way the man had sat stiffly, never pulling out his phone, never looking at anyone. The way the woman had gripped the note she later handed him, her eyes darting to the side, watching him. Judge Wright spoke before Jamal could piece it all together. "That man on the bus? He's not just anyone. He's a federal witness. One that a lot of people want to disappear." Jamal's skin went cold. The woman nodded. "You didn't just offer a seat that day. You unknowingly got involved in something dangerous. The people looking for you, they think you know something. They think I told you something." Jamal's chest tightened. "But I don't know anything." The judge let out a slow breath. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that they believe you do." Jamal's mind spun. His entire life had changed because of a single act of kindness. And now, people were after him for information he didn't even have. The woman turned to him, her voice softer now. "That's why I left you the note. I was supposed to disappear that day, but when you gave me your seat, I realized something." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You weren't part of this mess. You were just a kid doing the right thing. And I knew the second they found out about the bus, they'd come looking for you. I had to warn you before they got to you first." Jamal's heart pounded. "So what now? I just, disappear?" Judge Wright's jaw clenched. "That's exactly what they want. But we're not going to let that happen." Jamal swallowed. "We?" Before anyone could answer, the car suddenly jerked. Tires screeched as the vehicle swerved violently to the side. The woman grabbed Jamal's arm, bracing him as Judge Wright fought to keep control of the wheel. Then, just ahead of them, headlights flashed. A black SUV blocked the road. Jamal's breath hitched. They found us. Judge Wright slammed the brakes, bringing the car to a skidding halt. The woman cursed under her breath, reaching for something beneath her jacket. The doors of the SUV swung open. Shadows emerged, moving toward them with purpose. Jamal's hands clenched into fists. He had spent the past day running, hiding, questioning everything. But now, as he sat there, staring at the approaching figures, something inside him shifted. He was done being scared. He turned to Judge Wright. "What do we do?" The judge met his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. And then, with a steady voice, he said, "We fight." Jamal's heart pounded as the figures moved closer, their faces masked in the glare of headlights. The air felt thick, heavy with tension. His mind screamed at him to run, to escape, but there was nowhere left to go. He clenched his fists, his breath steadying. He was done being a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. The woman beside him reached into her jacket, pulling out a small device. "Stay close to me," she whispered. "No matter what happens." Judge Wright's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "Follow my lead." The car door flew open, and he stepped out first, his stance calm but firm. The woman followed, motioning for Jamal to stay behind her. The figures from the SUV stopped just a few feet away. One of them stepped forward, his voice smooth, controlled. "Judge Wright," the man said, tilting his head slightly. "You've been very busy." Jamal could barely breathe. He watched the judge, searching for any sign of fear, but the man remained unmoved. "You're making a mistake," Judge Wright said evenly. "The boy doesn't know anything." The man let out a low chuckle. "That's the problem, isn't it? We can't afford to take that risk." Jamal felt the weight of those words sink into his chest. He wasn't just a loose end to them, he was a problem they needed to eliminate. The woman took a step forward, her voice sharp. "You know what will happen if you push this." She held up the device at her hand, pressing a button. Somewhere in the distance, a faint beep sounded. The man's expression darkened. Jamal glanced between them, confusion swirling in his head. Whatever that device was, it meant something. "You think a recording changes anything?" the man scoffed. "We control the narrative." The woman smirked. "Not this time." She turned slightly, nodding toward the judge. "It's already been sent out. If anything happens to the boy or to us, the world will know everything." Jamal felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just about him anymore. The man's jaw twitched. He looked over his shoulder at the others, weighing his options. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of passing cars. Then, with an exhale, he took a step back. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Judge Wright didn't flinch. "Yes, it is." The tension in the air cracked like a snapped wire. Without another word, the figures retreated, stepping back into the SUV. The engine roared to life, and within seconds, they were gone. Jamal let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His legs felt weak, his hands shaking slightly. It was over. The woman turned to him, her expression softer now. "You're safe." Jamal swallowed hard. "What did you send?" Judge Wright placed a firm hand on Jamal's shoulder. "The truth." Jamal let those words settle. It wasn't just about him giving up a seat anymore. That one small moment had unraveled something much bigger, something that had forced powerful people to scramble, to cover their tracks. And now it was all out in the open. As they drove away, Jamal stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. He had started the day as an ordinary kid, just trying to do the right thing. Now he was walking away from something he never could have imagined. The woman looked over at him. "You're gonna be okay," she said. Jamal let out a small, tired laugh. "I sure hope so." Judge Wright glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You did more than you know, Jamal. Sometimes, doing the right thing puts you in the middle of something bigger. But that's how change happens." Jamal nodded slowly, letting those words sink in. Maybe it wasn't fair that he had been dragged into all of this, but at least now, he understood why. And maybe, just maybe, it had all happened for a reason. As they disappeared into the night, he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning.